glad to have all of you who are tuning in via the interweb, and we are glad to have you. Today we are finishing a series on Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. It's on the audiobook, it's a paperback book or regular, and she also has on HBO Max, if you have HBO Max, she has a complete series, a 5-part series. And so I have listened to that, and a lot of the information that I have, I've used from that series, because it was just an amazing series with a live studio audience that she had. So glad to see everyone here this morning, and we are going to take just a couple of minutes to just kind of set ourselves and check in and bring ourselves into this moment. Okay, so if you feel comfortable, just settle into your seat. If you feel comfortable closing your eyes, we are just going to take a couple of minutes and take a nice deep breath in and release, nice and slow. Another nice deep breath in. And release. Take just a moment to let go of all of the thoughts of today, all of the thoughts of this morning, what you may be doing after church today, and bring your attention right here to this moment. Feel your weight in the seat below you. Your feet on the ground. Take another nice deep breath in. Release. And we're grateful for this moment. We're grateful for the opportunity to come together and exchange ideas and learn things that will allow us to grow stronger and deeper in our spirituality, in our ability to be compassionate and empathetic with ourselves and with each other. And we say thank you. All right, so this morning, like Randy said, if you have a comment, that's my favorite part of having a class, is I want your input. I want if you have a story that you want to tell, if you have a question, if you have a comment that you want to make, please make sure you do that, because I love that. That's why I want to teach the classes, is so that we have that interaction, and I don't want to just sit up here and do a lecture, because I don't like that. I want to hear from you. And then Paul will bring around a mic so that we make sure that the people who are listening online will be able to hear your comment. So, Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, just an amazing series. You know, we've gone through just a lot in this series, and the last one that I did was places that we go with others, compassion, empathy, and the framework for meaningful connection. And we didn't get all the way through it, which is fine, but I wanted to make sure that we got to the framework for meaningful connection, which was the very last section of that. So as we were going through it, you know, a lot of the things that we talked about, compassion and empathy, one of the things that we wanted to concentrate on is how do we be with other people in service to them when people are struggling or suffering, without taking on their suffering and their struggle. And so we talked about empathy and compassion, and they defined compassion as the daily practice of recognizing and accepting our shared humanity. Oops. so that we treat ourselves and others with loving kindness, and we take action in the face of suffering. So it's not just about that compassion with other people. It's about making sure that we are being compassionate with ourselves as well. And it says that it's the daily practice of recognizing and accepting our shared humanity, so that we treat ourselves and others with loving kindness, and we take action. So compassion is an action. It's something that we do. It's not just something that we feel for other people. It's something that when we see something, we do something about it. We want to do something to alleviate that suffering. And sometimes that may just be giving someone a hug.
It's called heart.
Heart. It is called heart. It could be just saying, you know, I'm here with you. You're not alone in this. Okay. One of the things that she had was Prema Chadron was a comment that she made, a quote that she had, and it says that compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. And one of the things that she continues with this, she says, when we practice generating compassion, we can expect to experience our fear of pain. Compassion practice is daring. It involves learning to relax and allow ourselves to be more gentle toward what scares us. In cultivating compassion, we draw from the wholeness of our experience. And this just really struck me. Our suffering, our empathy, as well as our cruelty and our terror. It has to be this way. So, how many of us have actually thought about it that way? To be truly compassionate with someone, that we have to really be in touch. And I get that when you think about people who are really, really compassionate, generally they're people who have been through stuff. They're people that have walked through some stuff, and they can empathize, they can relate to that pain. But what about this statement that it is our suffering, our empathy, as well as our cruelty and our terror? Kobe.
I think when we look back and see the times that we were cruel, that we knew if we said something it would hurt somebody, and we said it anyway, and times that we were absolutely terrified, gives us the understanding to be compassionate. One of the librarian series, they had a fairy that was she had been trapped for 30 years and had to serve this town, and she got her freedom, and she was going to pay the town back. And they were trying to figure out how to get to her so that she wouldn't do that. And she ended up having to grant this little boy a wish, and he said, I wish that you felt fear. And she had to grant that wish, and she came to that fear, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is what you guys feel?
Wow.
And she was ready to, just go back to her fairy life because she understood that. And that really was a good demonstration of when we see something like that, we understand it does make a difference, and it does give us compassion for what other people are going through.
When we feel there's somebody else's problem, so we have compassion.
Right. And I think that's a
That's
great.
God. That's God in your heart. That's compassion.
Yeah, I think that's a great great analogy. LB, is when we think of a time when we've been cruel, when we think of a time where we've said something to someone that we knew was going to hurt them, so that we reach back to that and we feel that and we remember that, so that when that happens to us, that we're able to stop instead of just reacting defensively and becoming angry about it. We're able to stop and go, okay, I wonder what's happening with that person, that they're feeling like this is the only option that they have in this moment, to say this or to do this, so that and to be in this place. And we're able to step back and not take it as personally and go and see their humanity. I think that was it.
You can realize how much they hurt,
right,
to be able to have to do that to someone.
Right, because it's it almost always comes back to fear. When anytime we're in a situation where we're reacting or we're creating, we're causing pain or something, it comes back to fear, which a lot of times comes to a past pain that we have experienced, and we don't want to experience that pain again. So we're not going to be vulnerable, and we're going to lash out. You know, it talked about sitting with someone, and it talks about sitting with someone in their pain, because we have so many times where we have people that are just walking around that have no idea how to sit with their own pain, and so they are doing whatever they can to cover that up, to numb it, or lashing out. And we see a lot of times where people who are hurting other people, it's because they don't know how to sit with their own pain.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
They need therapy. They need therapy.
And compassion from the people that are with them. So empathy, that talks about empathy as the most powerful tool of compassion. It is an emotional skill that allows us to understand that someone is experiencing and to reflect back on that understanding. So empathy is a skill set. It's something, you know, she talks about it's the same as like shooting 3-point shots. You can't just read something about it and be good at it. You have to practice it and practice it and practice it. And it's the same thing with empathy. It's a skill set that you have to practice, which means you're going to be in these situations and you're going to mess it up. You know, somebody's going to be in a situation where you want to be there for them, and you're going to mess it up. You're just going to screw it up. But the great thing is you have the opportunity to go back and say, you know what? You needed me to be there for you, and we're going to talk about several misses, empathy misses, and you know what? And man, I just took over the narrative. I just took it over. I was trying to fix it for you because I wanted you to feel better, and I wasn't there, and I didn't allow you to feel what you were feeling, and just sit with you with that. And I want the opportunity to come back and do that for you, and practice that. Okay. We also, she talked about that it's not our job to rescue someone from their pain. It's our job to show them how to sit in their pain. And empathy is a skill set of compassion. And it's sitting with someone, and it's being able to just say, you know what, I get it. And I don't get it necessarily because I've been where you are or because I've experienced it. I get it because I'm listening to you. And I'm believing what you say. So it's not necessarily about trying to walk in somebody else's shoes, because we can't walk in somebody else's shoes. You know, we talked about how we can't take off our lenses through that we're seeing through the world through. And so when someone tells us something and is telling us a story, we're still seeing it through our own lens. And a lot of times we don't believe it. We're not believing it the way they're presenting it to us, because we're seeing it through how we would react in that situation, or what we would feel in that situation. So one of the ways of being truly empathetic is by just listening and not trying to walk in someone else's shoes, but saying, you know what, I'm just here to hear what you're saying.
But you can give them, if you can feel where they're at, you can give them positive feedback where they probably help them. Well, we don't have to put ourselves in their shoes, but we understand where they're at, and we can give them feedback where they can change. You know,
We can, well, and we'll talk about that some,
Yeah.
and about, you know, giving unsolicited advice, and where that, and what that actually is. Uh-oh. One moment, please. Technical difficulties. I'm sitting on my mic cord. Now I can't. Yes, please. My assistant, Brandy. My mic. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you. Okay, and not sit on that. Okay, so these are some of the things. We also talked about the attributes of empathy. So perspective taking, which is what I was just talking about. That taking that perspective of I'm going to see this through my lens and through what I'm feeling, instead of just saying, you know what, I'm going to be here and listen to what it is that you're saying, or staying out of judgment. How hard is that one? Staying out of judgment. She said that they can what's the word? They can perceive judgment, or they can see judgment coming with two different things. Hang on, just by a couple of different things, and one of those is we always judge people in areas where we feel shame, where we feel like we're inadequate. Parenting, whoo! Any of us who are parents, boy, we know that, you know, and we have that, we see something happening with somebody else's kid, and we're, you know, and you have that quick judgment, yeah. And she said she uses the illustration of, she said, you know, you're walking through the store, and your kid's sitting in the basket, and they're all nice and happy, and then, you know, you go by this person, and the kid's in the basket throwing everything around and screaming, and then she said, by aisle 7, you're wearing a Cheerios box and crying, you know, because that's your kid.
You can give advice instead of jumping to it. You give advice, it may change. You said you feel in yourself that happens.
And we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk.
What you feel, so someone else gets to a higher, instead of staying lower, because then you're higher than that, and you give someone else. And we're gonna talk about that.
That's not going on
but
the
that's
air.
do what?
His comments are not going on the air.
Oh, okay.
So you might want to.
Okay. So what Chris was talking about was giving them advice and helping them to see a different way. And so we're going to talk about that, Chris. You know, it was interesting when talking about that. So we were, you know, we have the crisis cold weather shelter, and several of the churches opened up when it was such a cold streak, and we're shelter in place, and so they opened up, and then at one point one of the churches closed up for that because they had something else that was going on that night, and I'm just going to tell on myself here, is that, you know, there was this judgment from me about okay, so we're gonna close down to talk about Jesus, but we're gonna close down the shelter that we're having to take care of the people that he tells us that we need to be taken care of. And what my judgment with that was that I felt like I had not been contributing enough and had not been here enough to help with our shelter. And I recognize that, especially after I saw this and read this again. I recognized that that's what was happening. That was my judgment of them, because I felt like I was not taking care of our shelter the way I felt like I should be. So, anybody else have any? Okay.
I noticed that you had compassion, saying that you weren't here enough, and you brought your emotion out. So you want to help, you want to. That's like God in you, which is a positive trait.
Right, and it is. I mean, we stop and we look at the places where we judge, and the ability to just stop and take a look at that and go, okay, what is it within me that's what am I feeling, so that's creating that judgment for this other person.
Sometimes that happens with me and her. She always says, I'm judging her, and I'm not. I'm making her look at it. Judges say, if you don't stop, this is what's going to happen. That's judge. But looking at it and presenting it, the way I look at it is letting her know that, look at that and see how it can change for the positive. And she takes it for face value.
People look at their own lenses, and their experiences. It's not always right for you.
Elby, will you grab that? Our mic man disappeared. Our mic man. Yeah, I think
Paul.
that's what he said. No, it's Paul.
Probably not on.
Steve.
I was just going to say that if you judge and when it's perceived, or it always seems to be perceived, that you feel you're superior, and so it really just make the situation any better.
Right.
You can be compassionate for somebody, but you start judging, and you really are making it worse.
Right. And that goes back to that compassion is equals. It's not I'm here to save you. It's equals. You're equals. Okay, so staying out of judgment, recognizing emotion. At the beginning of the series we talked about actually picking the language, the accurate language for what it is that we're feeling, and when through those lenses we look at someone and they're having emotion, and we through our filters we go, oh, he looks like he's angry, but we don't know. We talked about, we don't know someone's backstory. We don't know how they were raised or what experiences that they've had. And so we listen, and we stay curious. We ask questions. You seem like you're angry. Is that true? And he may be like, no, I'm not angry. I'm just scared. But anger is the easiest emotion. So we stay curious and we ask questions, and we also communicate our emotions. We check in, we ask, we see how it is that we're feeling within the situation, and then we practice mindfulness. And mindfulness actually is just paying attention. That's what mindfulness is just paying attention.
Keeping your wits about you.
Keeping your wits about you, yes. So we also talked about, okay, I've got the computers going. There we go. It was trying to get me to update something. I'm like, I don't know, please do not update now. Okay. It was a near enemy, it was. So she said she talked about near enemy, and she finally recognized that when we look at the near enemy of things, it's easy to see, like we think love, we think hate as the far enemy. But what we're actually have is we have a near enemy, which masquerades as the thing, as compassion and connection. But what it actually does is completely unravels connection. So
The enemy.
the near enemy of compassion is pity. You know, or the near enemy of empathy is sympathy. I feel sorry for you. I feel bad for you. Oh, you poor thing. You know, and that all that does is that makes a disconnect. That doesn't bring that back up to we're equals in this. I'm not trying to save you. I feel sorry for you. Those things don't happen to me, you know, but I feel sorry for you for what you're going through. And that completely separates us from connection. Toby.
Let me get that.
Whenever we think we have to fix someone, we are disempowering them. And that's a vibrational that actually lowers the vibrational rate. And people feel that.
Right.
Because you can feel those vibrations going out and it just lowers it. So if we can look at them, and this is what Abraham says, is, you know, everybody has that divine spark within them. So everybody has the ability to solve their issues. And if we look at them as a powerful creator that is creating this experience, and that they also have the ability to create whatever other experience they want, and we accept them as a powerful creator, then we allow them to open up, and that can come to them.
Right.
But if we don't, it contracts them, and then they're not open for the universe to work through them.
Right. And that's one of the near misses that we're going to talk about is that being that fixer. I'm gonna fix this for you. So it says, on the surface, the near enemy of emotions or experiences might look like or even feel like connection, but ultimately they drive us to be disconnected from ourselves and from each other. Without awareness, near enemies become the practice that fuel separation rather than practices that reinforce the inextricable connection of all people. So they divide us. So empathy near misses. Sympathy, as I said, sympathy versus empathy. I feel sorry for you. I'll, bless your heart. And one of the things that I love about Al-Anon is that you sit around a circle and you're sharing your experiences. You're talking about what's, your experiences, and you don't have anybody in that circle going, oh, poor you. Wow. Gosh, man, that is so awful. Oh, gosh, that's terrible. How awful for you. They're just going, yeah. And they're listening to you. They're sitting there with you. They're listening to you, but they're not feeling sorry for you. And that works. That's why it works, is because you don't have that, bless your heart, oh, you poor thing. Because what does that do? For me, that just fuels it. Yeah, boy, that victimhood, that victimhood gets empowered when you've got somebody going, oh my gosh, that's awful. Oh, yeah, then I get to continue to be the victim in it. But when they don't, they go, wow, yeah, that sucks. And now what? Then that empowers me, just like you were saying, Obi, that empowers me to do something about it and do it differently. Discharging discomfort with blame. And I thought this was so interesting because you are in a situation and somebody's telling you a story about something that's happened. Who are you going to blame? Man, that's terrible. Oh my gosh, how could they do that to you? What is wrong with them, But what she said is, that is such a self-focused response. I'm uncomfortable, and so I'm going to shift it, and I'm going to blame someone else. That has absolutely nothing to do with the person that's telling you the story. You are not sitting with them. You are not serving them. You are shifting it. You're feeling bad, but sometimes it feels like, we think that that's what they want. That somebody wants. They want somebody to commiserate with them and tell them how awful somebody else is. But that is so disempowering.
Counterproductive.
And it's counterproductive. And when we do that, that's a self-focused response. I thought that was like, wow. So, I've been in a situation where I had that and started to do that because, it's kind of a habit, isn't it? When somebody starts telling us a story and we get into that story and we want to blame that person that they're talking about for they having done something. And then I stopped and I was like, whoa, that's a self-focused response to that. So, comparing and competing. Well, you think that's bad. Well, wait till you hear what happened with me at work the other day. And there's a difference between competing and comparing and sharing the story to make that connection of, wow, yeah, I had something similar happen. And boy, I get what you're feeling. And so I think that makes a connection, because that comparing and competing, we've all known people that do that though. Oh yeah, I'm gonna one up you on this one, huh? Okay.
Sometimes it makes them rethink their problems not as bad as they could be. Because we all do that once in a while.
She says sometimes it can make them feel like helping.
Maybe it's not as bad as I really think it is. I get my mind off that, and other people think it's worse sometimes. Sometimes it's a good thing,
And sometimes
you said people in Africa are worse than you are. I mean,
okay, so let me ask you, if you had a parent that when you were eating and you didn't want to eat, and they said there are starving children in Africa, did that ever make you eat your stuff? Want to eat your stuff because there are several,
realize that they're poorer than I am. Yeah, did.
And
I was grateful.
And it's possible, because what she's saying is that sometimes if we share a story, it might make them recognize that what they're experiencing is not as bad as what other people are experiencing. But what we're wanting to do, what we're wanting to cultivate that connection with people, is to allow them to feel what they're feeling.
Express it out.
And so I think that kind of goes back to that fixing it. We're going to try and fixing it. And so that's something else that we're going to, I can fix this and I can fix you. And so I think that goes back to that, is that we're not attending to what that person's feeling. We're just trying to make them feel better. And that is control.
But sometimes it doesn't make them feel better because they realize it's not as bad as it could be.
And that's possible. And with this series, what this series is talking about is allowing that person, being able to sit with that compassion and be compassionate with them and allow them to feel what it is that they're feeling. And because when we're trying to fix it, that's also
give feedback.
But when we do that, when we try to fix a problem for someone else, especially if it's if they ask us, "What do you think?" then okay, we can give them advice and say, well, one of the things they do with Love and Logic with dealing with kids is, do you want to hear what other people have done? And so if they ask, what do you think? What would you do? But if we just offer advice and we try to fix it for them, that's control. That's not compassion. That's control. We're trying to fix the problem for you. We want you to feel better. But it's not about trying to make somebody else feel better. It's about sitting with them and letting them feel what it is that they're feeling. And it's like Elby said, a lot of times when we do that, we disempower someone and we don't give them their opportunity to feel what they're feeling and walk through it and experience that pain. Okay. Sometimes we feel like we don't know what to say. We feel like I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what to say, and there's no right thing to say. There just isn't. Basically, what we want is we want them to recognize that they are not alone. And Brene says if we want it not to be a self-focused, we can say, what does support look like right now? What does support from me look like right now? Which I thought was just absolutely wonderful. We're not trying to fix it. It's like, what can I do? Do you want to talk about this? Gosh, that sounded like a horrible thing. What does support look like for me? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to try and problem solve it? What does that look like for you? And they may say, I don't even want to talk about it. I want to talk about something else. Okay, let's do that then. Because we really don't know what that support looks like, so we ask. Okay, boundaries. Brene said that they found that the people who were the most compassionate in all of the research, in the 20 years that they had done the research, the most compassionate people were people with the strongest boundaries. Which is just interesting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because what they said is, with boundaries, I have to know where you begin and I end. So otherwise, we're in enmeshment with the people. When we're not setting boundaries. So she quoted Prentice Hemphill, who defined boundaries as the distance at which, I've got this slide or not. Yeah, the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. It's our relationship should not diminish my integrity. So, what are the boundaries in a relationship that allow me to keep my integrity intact and allow you to keep your integrity intact? So we stop and you think about it with boundaries. So, and the idea of keeping our integrity. Because when we set a boundary and then we allow someone to cross that boundary, when I thought about this, that is me feeling like I've lost my integrity because I've set a boundary for a purpose. I've set that boundary for a reason. And so if I'm going to allow someone to step over that and walk over that boundary, then I'm no longer in integrity. Paul.
I just thought about this, but in all the years that we've been doing the classes, I don't think we've ever had a class on boundaries, and I think it'd be a phenomenal thing to talk about.
I agree.
Because I think we all need to be reinforced, and I think some of us also need to learn how to set those boundaries for yourself and how to keep those boundaries with other people.
Right. And, especially those of us who are people pleasers. Boy, setting boundaries, you're a people pleaser, that's a tough one. That's really a tough one. But the first time I read that, and something else that Brene had written, was that the most compassionate people are people who set healthy boundaries and set strong boundaries, and then pay attention to those. And the only people who get upset about you setting a boundary are the ones who are benefiting from you having none. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Okay, so framework for meaningful connection. Okay, skill set number 1 is developing grounded competence and learning and improving. So this is talking about what does it take to walk alongside people when they're struggling. And so with learning and improving, the near enemies are knowing and proving. So with knowing and proving, it's someone who has all of the answers. They already know, they know everything, and it looks like confidence. When you're looking at it, you're watching it, it looks like confidence, but it's so fragile. When you start asking questions and questioning that, then it starts to unravel, because it's like, I have to be right. And the thing is, when we can stay in the learning, it's like, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right. You understand the distinction between those two? Is I'm here to get it right. I am willing to hear what it is that you have to say, and possibly change that.
Sounds like someone who's humble against someone who's aggressive, like the total opposite of each other.
Someone who's humble as opposed to someone who is aggressive. Right. Right. I'm willing to hear this. It's like, isn't it Will Bowen that his definition of listening is, I'm willing to hear this with the idea of changing my mind about what I'm hearing, and that's it. And so the far enemy of that is protecting that fragile self-worth. So for people who grew up or have been in relationships where you weren't allowed to be right, you weren't allowed to make a mistake, and so you develop this sense of, I need to be right. I have to be right all the time because I'm not allowed to make a mistake. And so I so bad about this. My gosh, this was something I had to work really, really hard at, and I still have to work at, was that need to be right in a situation, because I wasn't allowed to make a mistake. So, and if you were wrong, it's a mistake. So, and that that's needing to be right is all about ego. It's all about protecting that fragile ego and feeling like I have to have this correct. Okay? Anyone have anything on that? Okay. The courage to walk alongside. So the near enemy of courage to walk alongside is controlling the path and trying to shut it down. The empathy misses on that is trying to shut it down and trying to make somebody feel better. Assigning blame, it was all those things, those near misses that we just talked about. Trying to assign blame to someone else, giving advice on that, or being in judgment. So that when we're not walking alongside someone else when we're trying to control the path. When we're trying to control the narrative, we're just trying to manage them and manage the situation. And sometimes it's just because we feel bad. We're uncomfortable in that situation, and so we're gonna fix it. Sometimes it's because we just think, we're people pleasers, and we just think, I got the answer to this, I can fix this. If you will just listen to me. How many of us as parents, have had that? If you will just listen to me. And it's so hard as a parent. I think it's harder now that my kids are adults. It's harder to watch them and know that they have got to walk their own path. And they didn't ask me for my advice. They don't want to hear it, and sometimes my son, it just ticks him off when I try to give him advice and try to tell him something. Elby.
Someone was sharing with me recently that unsolicited advice is always criticism. And she said someone had told her that, and she said, it took me a while, but she said, my daughter would definitely agree with that. And so it's something that you really don't think about it as being, But unsolicited advice is criticism. And if you really sit with that, it's pretty powerful.
Wow. Yeah, it will make you stop in your tracks when you're getting ready to give unsolicited advice. If you think about it, that you're being critical.
What do you think, Mary, about asking someone if they want your advice?
You know, I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes you can phrase it as, would you like a suggestion? And sometimes they'll say no, and then you go, okay, and then you just sit with it. If they go, yeah, I would like a suggestion, then I think that's perfectly okay. It's just the whole point of, if they say no, taking that and going, okay, and not taking it personally.
Yes.
You know, because it's really easy to take that personally. They don't want my advice. It's like, it's such good stuff, you can just hear it. And the far enemy of that is walking away. And I absolutely love this analogy that she gave. She said her mother told her that when you see someone in pain, you look that pain in the eye. And because, you know, you go to that funeral, you're the first one to take a casserole to the door. Because when it's you, not if it's you, but when it's you, because it will be, when you are in pain and you look up and you see somebody look away because they can't handle seeing you in pain, that is some of the worst loneliness that you're going to feel. And it's like, wow. You know, I've got somebody right now who really, really struggling, and I watch myself not look away because it's like, I don't know what to do. I can't help her. I can't, you know, because I want to fix it. I want to make her feel better. And reading this and hearing this has helped me to be able to actually stop and just look at her. Because you stop and you think about it. We probably have all had that experience where we have been struggling with something, where we have been in pain, and people won't look you in the eye. You know, you think about that with people who are standing on the street corner. They've talked about how invisible they feel because nobody actually just looks at them. And so I always try to make sure that I do that when I see someone that's standing on the street, even if I'm not stopping to give them anything. I always make sure that I try to acknowledge them and catch their eye and smile at them and wave and acknowledge them to recognize, I see you. Because that is such a loneliness and such a pain. And I thought that was a wonderful analogy. Okay, story stewardship and honoring the story as sacred. And the near enemy of that is performing connection while driving disconnection. So part of wrong one. The skill set of stewardship is not just about being a steward of someone else's story. When someone tells us a story, we listen to it. We believe, and then we believe them when they tell us something. And if they say, you know, this is between us, we do that. We keep that. You know, I remember having someone that I told something to, and I said, you know, this is just between us. And the next thing I knew, you know, half of the people I work with knew about it. So I recognized that this was not someone who was safe for me. And that's part of being a good steward of your own story, is recognizing that not everyone has earned the right to hear your stories. I told her, I said, you know, this is something I'm a big prankster and I like a good joke and I can take a good joke. Here's something that you can't joke with me about. Here's something that I don't want other people to hear, or for you to say to me in front of somebody else. of other people. And 2 days later, we were standing in a group of people, and she brings it up and says it. And I was just like, wow. So I know this is not a person that I can trust with my stories. This is not a person who's earned the right to hear my stories. And again, when someone tells us, we listen and we believe them, and we are a good steward of their story. And the far enemy of that is not valuing that story, because what that did was that completely damaged my trust in this person. And I never told her anything again. I was like, okay, learn that lesson. Okay, does anyone have anything, any story they want to tell, any comment that they want regarding this? Again, the book, it's on audio, it's just amazing, it delves into so much. And then the 5-part series on, if you have HBO Max, the 5-part series is on HBO Max, and you can watch it. They're like 45-minute segments, and they go into so much depth, and that's where I got all of the information that I've had to you today. So, and we're going to close, as always, with pictures of my grandchildren. This is my granddaughter. She just turned 1 last month, and she's starting to do the whole sidestep thing, and she's starting to walk a little bit. And then here's my grandson, who's 7. This pretty much tells you his personality. So, again, thank you guys all so much for all of your feedback, and the stories that you have shared throughout this series. It has been absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sure. And we have some announcements. All right. Map makers of Greater Springfield are about to finish for the season. They are no longer collecting bags, so please stop bringing bags. Martin Luther King Jr. March will take place tomorrow morning, January the 16th, and please plan to meet at the Jordan Valley Ice Park at 8:15 and to carry the Unity banner as we walk to the Belois Theater for a short program. So that's tomorrow morning at 8:15. Also on January 16th at 3 p.m. on Facebook Live at Be Unity, Unity will present a panel of speakers to discuss the impact that I Have a Dream speech continues to make after 60 years. At 6:30 p.m. on January 16th, guests are welcome to join in the Board of Trustees meeting. We get a board meeting. Is that this Monday?
What's the day?
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yes,
Dan.
you're welcome at
Yes.
about 6:30.
Guests are welcome. They start at 6 o'clock and they have to do their own little check-in, and then guests are welcome at 6:30. So if you want to find out what's happening with our church and our ministry within the board, it's a great way to find out. On the 22nd of January, New Thought World Religion class will be presented by John Brocker on Meditations with Master Eichert. Also on Sunday, January the 22nd, will be a potluck followed by our annual meeting. Please sign up in the foyer what you will bring for the potluck. Childcare will be provided. This annual meeting, we will be electing board members, new board members. We have 3 positions available for that. And if you are a member of the church, please make sure that you attend to vote on the board members. Even if you are not a member, please stay for the potluck. We're going to go over all of the things that have happened over the past year and what we are bringing about in the new year. It's a great way, again, to find out what's happening within our church and just have some really good food, because we've got lots of good cooks in here. The 28th of January is the inaugural Ozarks Festival of Fates. Unity will have a presence at that event, and more details will follow on that. Saturday, February the 4th, Sue will be leading a treasure mapping and vision boarding event. If you've not done one of those, they are wonderful to attend. Just show up, and there's all kinds of stuff to make a vision board. And save the date, our YOU are hosting a Valentine-themed pancake breakfast on Sunday, February the 5th, starting at 9:15. So just save that date.
I think that Sue's doing a visioning,
A visioning,
not
not a vision board.
a vision board.
Sorry,
so it's a
I
vision.
have revamped that since I typed it.
Okay,
We're doing a congressional visioning,
a congressional visioning.
congregational.
I wondered what that was.
Yes, sorry.
Congressional. I was like, wow, I wonder
No.
what that is. Congregational. How about that? We're congregational.
Somebody needs to.
Visioning, which I love that idea. We're going to be visioning what we want to see as a congregation and what we want to see as a ministry. So please make sure you plan to attend that. And that was the 28th of January. So,
And then what comes up will be taken to the board retreat.
and what comes up will be taken to the board retreat, which will follow that to start making a calendar for this coming year. So that's awesome. I love that. Okay, so we are going to meet. Thanks again. Thank you for all of you who are online with us, and we are going to meet in the back.